All right. It is the top of the hour, so I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, Lynn, since you're my first presenter and I see you on webcam, can you give me thumbs up that you're hearing me okay? Awesome. We're off to a roaring start. Welcome, everybody, to the August version of the 2020 Quarantine Virtual Insights Conference. My name is Bill McDowell. I'm COO at Accelerant Research. We are happy to be hosting yet another of these virtual insights conferences. Obviously, here we are. This is our third one. If this is your first time joining, thank you very much. Glad to have you. If you are a returning attendee, thanks a lot. We started in, let's see, May or March actually, doing these virtual conferences because guess what? The nation shut down, the world shut down, and in-person insights conferences were not a thing. And that continues today and well into looking forward to the end of this year. So this was our opportunity and our chance to basically get a bunch of research nerds together to talk shop, to share experiences, to just network to the extent possible. And that's what we're going to do today. We've got a really great lineup of speakers. We've got, if you've joined in previous months, this is going to be a bit of a shorter session. This is going to be 4 hours long, starting right now at 11 p.m. Eastern. We're almost treating this like a rolling lunch and learn, from East Coast to West. So starting at 11 a.m., we're doing one webinar presentation per hour, each hour on the hour. So 11, 12, 1, and 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to run through our lineup of presenters real quick. We have kicking off is going to be Lynn Ferman from Ferman Innovation, talking about innovation in sports, running while multitasking online. We are going to go for the noon presentation, keeping the sports theme going, with Renata Policicio doing the power of storytelling in sports, the method behind the magic. After that will be followed by a couple of presentations that get into more, we're going to leave the sports theme and get into some methods and techniques, as it were. So Dr. Ari Zelmanow from Panasonic is going to talk to us, share a very interesting presentation on how to interview like a detective. A former detective himself will be able to share some of his incredible experiences on the job and how they can now be applied to the world of insights and research. And I'm going to close us out with a presentation called Winning with Online Qualitative, Tips, Tricks, and Best Practices for Clients and Suppliers. I'm going to keep my intro really short. I'm going to go through just a few ground rules. So if you've joined us before, these are kind of the rules that we live by with these quarantined insights conferences. Number one being we are at the mercy of tech. Zoom has been our friend for most of this year. Monday morning on the East Coast notwithstanding, but should anything go out, we've got presenters who are all working from home. They're accessing remotely, and sometimes connections crap out, and it is what it is. So, if we lose anyone, we will record all sessions. We will post all of our archived videos after the fact, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Fingers crossed, these have gone quite well in the past. I'm knocking on wood right now, but hopefully all goes well for today's sessions as well. Number two is be respectful. We are doing a remote conference here. We are all sort of behind the scenes, as it were. We don't have to worry about, running into a speaker or a fellow attendee in line at the buffet for the conference. So there is, that natural tendency to hide behind the internet and troll a little bit. This hasn't been a problem in the past. I don't anticipate it will. We're, insights folks, we all kind of are in this together. But yeah, be respectful, avoid the trolling. That is to say, don't feel like you can't challenge, ask questions, push back. you know, everyone is a researcher. We are all, you know, used to this, right? So that, you know, dialogue and debate, nothing wrong with that. It's just the trolling that we're trying to avoid. And the last rule is, to the extent possible, network and engage. We are not at an in-person conference. We are all, you know, sitting either watching a Zoom feed or a YouTube feed, depending on how you're accessing right now. We don't all, you know, have the ability to shake hands with one another and network. So we'll try to, you know, simulate that as best we can. One way of doing that, if you're in the Zoom conference, definitely feel free to take advantage of the Q&A or the chat function, talk with one another, ask questions of the presenters, you know, try to keep this as interactive as possible. Also, let's take it out on social as well, LinkedIn and Twitter, using the hashtag QVIC2020. Try to network with one another, connect, you know, let's try to keep the conversation going as best we can. Got some really engaging presenters, but again, you know, to the extent that we can get audience involvement, that's great as well, as opposed to just sitting back and listening. Yeah, and that's it for my spiel. I am going to hand off to our first presenter, who is Lynn Ferman, and I'm going to ask Lynn to unmute, hopefully.
I'm unmuted, Bill. Should I,
All right, nope,
go ahead?
You're perfect. Yeah, so I've known Lynn for a number of years. We met, oh gosh, over a decade ago when we were both working at Bank of America. He was actually an internal client of mine when I was on the Insights team. And I always loved, so Lynn would run ideation sessions and innovation sessions among, you know, some of the internal teams, and I had the pleasure of sitting in on some of those. And I always loved his captivating presentation style and some of the interesting icebreakers that he would go through, some of which he's going to get to talking to today. So I'm very excited to shut up and hand off to Lynn. I'm going to mute myself, go dark, and hand over presenter rights to you, Lynn. You can take it away from here.
I need to, you need to enable me to share.
Yes, sir. I'm going to stop sharing, and you should now be able to.
Okay, very good. And
my friendly reminder, Lynn, when you begin doing your screen share to make sure that you're grabbing audio as well.
Thank you very much. Well, and thank you, Bill, for that introduction and for the honor of being on your panel today and being part of these great productions you've been putting on. I want to start out, though, just to express my sympathy and concern for all the people that are in the path of Hurricane Laura in Texas, Louisiana, and it's going up into Arkansas. I live in North Florida, so I have an appreciation for what they're going through. Now, today I have what I hope is a fascinating presentation, also a very timely presentation in the age we're living in now. And here's the agenda for my talk. I'm going to describe my background first and a little bit about the course that I teach on creativity and innovation at the University of North Florida, because it will be very germane to what we're going to be talking about for most of the time. I'm going to introduce a little innovation in sports that I've become involved in, and then most of the time will be spent on this interesting topic of running while multitasking online. And also, in the spirit of what Bill was just describing, trying to keep these virtual conferences interactive, I will have various breaks for questions throughout the presentation. So I would encourage you to post your questions in chat, and we will pick a few questions at each break, and I will answer those. So I'd really like to keep this interactive. So first, I just want to start with a little bit of my background. So I spent 25 years managing innovation at Fortune 500 companies, mostly at AT&T and Bank of America. And it's always great for me to come back to a market research conference or an insights conference like this one, because I started my career as a new product market research manager for AT&T and then the AT&T Universal Card for about 5 years. And I thought that was just an amazing foundation for all of the work that I've done since. It's really grounded me forever in the voice of the customer. And so I always take the mantra to be thinking about the customer first in everything I do. I then moved on to become a new product manager, new product development manager, launched many new products in the financial services industry. And I finished up my corporate career by leading the front end of the innovation process at Bank of America. As Bill described, I led all the brainstorming sessions at Bank of America. And then in 2013, I left the corporate world after 25 years to start my second career as a consultant, teacher, and trainer. So I started my own consulting firm, Ferman Innovation. Since the pandemic started, I've also become a consultant at the Small Business Development Center to help out small businesses through the crisis. I teach creativity and innovation, as I'll describe in a moment, as an adjunct professor at the University of North Florida, where I live in Jacksonville. And I also do a lot of corporate training for both Duke University as a global educator and the American Management Association as a faculty member, where I teach design thinking and creative thinking in business. Last year, I also authored a college textbook titled Business Creativity and Innovation. And I have a special offer for conference attendees. If you email me at my university address there you see on the screen, I'll have it up again at the end. I'm very happy to send you the free portion of my book that the publisher allows me to share. It's my entire chapter on idea tournaments. Now, a little bit about my class, Creativity and Innovation at the University of North Florida. So about 7 years ago, the University of North Florida invited me to create the class on innovation at the University of North Florida. They did not have a class on innovation at that time. And I presently teach both an undergraduate and graduate version of the course as an adjunct professor. And I had the honor last year of Forbes magazine writing an article about my class. They focused on the experiential learning approach that I apply on the course. In my class, it's a combination of lectures and then doing. I have all the students form teams on the first week of class. They pick a fictitious client, a large company like an Amazon or an ESPN or a Panasonic, and they fictitiously innovate for them, going through the process of innovation throughout the semester, applying what they learned in each lecture. You can find this article just by simply Googling Forbes Ferman. It'll be the first thing that comes up. Now, in the class, I teach the steps of the innovation process as it applies to the development of new products, services, programs, and processes. And going back to my roots, always with the focus on solving for customer needs. I'm a big believer in having the customer involved in some form in every step of the innovation process. And what I have repeatedly found in the research I've done is that companies that have embraced innovation have become very successful. In fact, these companies that I started highlighting many years ago have now become some of the largest companies in the world. And they all embrace a great culture of innovation, which has helped them be very successful. And it's this culture of innovation I like to point to in organizations that exhibit a great culture of innovation. Innovation activities are taking place continuously. These companies don't just wait until there is a problem. And this is and this helps them become great innovators, because innovation, just like playing the piano or playing basketball, it's a skill. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And if you just try to do it once in a while, you aren't going to be very good at it. So great companies are innovating continuously. And I want to share with you a quote here from Jeff Bezos of Amazon, who really demonstrates this. At Amazon, they encourage and expect innovation and experimentation at all levels. And I'll let you hear this quick quote from Jeff Bezos.
To be innovative, you have to experiment. If you want to have more invention, you need to do more experiments per week, per month, per year, per decade. It's that simple. You cannot invent without experimenting. And here's the other thing about experiments. Lots of them fail. If you know it's going to work in advance, it is not an experiment.
Now, some companies avoid innovation or only innovate once in a while or wait to innovate when there's a problem. And companies that routinely avoid innovation, they generally become irrelevant. And here's some classic examples. Atari was the leading game console manufacturer in the 1970s and 80s. They don't exist anymore. There is a company called Atari. It's not the original Atari. They bought the rights to the name when Atari was dissolved. Kodak is probably the poster child for failing to innovate. They had the tremendous market share of the photographic film market, 89% share in 1976. They invented digital photography, yet they chose not to commercialize it because they did not want to cannibalize the photographic film market. And now Kodak is coming out of bankruptcy, trying to get involved in various ventures. MySpace is another interesting, more recent example. They were the #1 social networking site in the world from 2005 to 2008 until they were usurped by Facebook. But by failing to innovate, they have now been relegated to a little niche in the social media landscape. So when you don't innovate, you run the risk of becoming irrelevant. And this is probably the single most important mantra that I teach in this course at the top of this page. The business models of today will not work to generate revenue tomorrow. We see this in every industry. Business models change, and if you're not ready to adapt, you're going to fall by the wayside. I teach a lot of case studies in this class where I demonstrate this. Probably the classic one in the last 10, 15 years has been Blockbuster versus Netflix. This business, the distribution of rental videos, has migrated through 3 different business models in just a little over a 10-year period. So I advocate that all companies have an innovation process and they continually be going through this process. I like to keep things really simple, so I've come up with 1-word descriptive names for each step in the process. It's explore, ideate, evaluate, and design. In explore, we're conducting lots of market research. We're understanding customer problems and market opportunities. Customer problems and market opportunities become the fuel for the second phase, the ideate phase, where we generate ideas to solve for those problems and try to capitalize on those market opportunities. Now, through that phase, we come up with lots of ideas. No company can or should implement every idea, so we have to have an evaluate phase. In the evaluate phase, we narrow down the ideas. That's where I get into what I call the idea tournaments, to narrow down ideas and select those big ideas that we're then going to move into the back end of innovation and into what I call the design phase. And in the design phase, we're understanding customer requirements, we're building prototypes, and we're evaluating and testing those prototypes and achieving the optimal design so that we can then have a successful launch. So that's my 4-step innovation process: explore, ideate, evaluate, and design. And now I want to come to the first question break. I'd like to just see if there's any questions anybody would like to ask related to anything I've talked about, my background, my innovation course, or my innovation process. And you can enter your questions in the chat, and we'll select a couple of questions to answer right now.
Hey, Lynn, it's Bill. No questions submitted just yet. I'll let you know if anything comes through, or you can just keep plugging away.
Very good. Well, again, as you have questions, just send them in the chat. I will have a few more question breaks. So now I want to talk about this intriguing topic of innovation in sports. I want to tell you about an innovation that I've experienced and participated in. As a precursor to this, I have to show you my 2 main hobbies, which are running and juggling. And I've had some success in each of these. As a runner, actually had an article written about me in Runner's World several years ago. I ran a 5-minute mile at the age of 50. They documented my quest to do that. And you can find that article pretty simply by Googling 5 minutes at age 50. I also became a juggler relatively late, around age 40. It was kind of one of these things I always wanted to do. I became a juggler, became fairly proficient at it, and now I actually do speaking engagements where I teach corporate audiences how to juggle, and I use all the steps in juggling to demonstrate how to multitask and how to innovate. It's a really fun program. I teach by giving everybody scarves that kind of float in the air so everybody can learn how to juggle. So it's a very entertaining, interactive presentation with lots of valuable takeaways on how to innovate and how to multitask. And then about 15 years ago, I found out about a little known sport called joggling. It's running while juggling, and that's a picture of me joggling. And yes, joggling is a real sport, and it actually has a real world championship that's been staged every year since 1981. The International Jugglers Association, the IJA, started holding a World Joggling Championships track meet in 1981, and it's held at a different location, usually or almost always in North America, different location at a track for about 4 hours on one day, usually in the middle of July. So that is joggling. And I happen to be, having participated for many years now, a 7-time gold medalist at the World Joggling Championships and a former championship record holder. I once did the 800-meter 3-ball event. That's a half a mile while juggling 3 balls in 2 minutes and 23 seconds with no drops. So I'm very, very proud of that record that I had at one time. And now I'll just come to another quick question break. Would anybody like to know more about joggling or anything else I've talked about at this point? And Bill, I guess there's no questions in the chat at this point?
No, sir, not at the moment.
Okay, well then we'll go on, and I will talk about the main part of the presentation today, which is running while multitasking online. So I want to come back to that mantra from my business innovation course: the business models of today will not work tomorrow. Now, when I came up with that many years ago, and I started teaching the class, I meant tomorrow to be a metaphorical tomorrow, that the business models might change in a year, 3 years, 5 years. At some point, they're going to change. So you need to be innovating so you're ready for the change, or you can actually affect that change in the industry yourself and reap the benefits of it. But on March 11th, tomorrow literally meant the next day. That's kind of the date I have in my mind of when the world started to change and we all had to start operating online. And for many of us, this has been the most disruptive event of our lifetimes. We suddenly had to change the way we all operate. We suddenly had to be innovating. Now, Emily Moore was prepared for the pandemic. Emily Moore was the IJA director of joggling. She was the person responsible for producing the 2020 World Joggling Championships, which were originally scheduled for El Paso, Texas, to take place on July 18th. And while nearly all other sports were suddenly in disarray and most of them had to postpone their events back in mid-March, Emily, all she had to do was start working on Plan B. You see, great innovators don't rely on luck. As Louis Pasteur famously said well over a century ago, chance favors the prepared mind. When you're constantly innovating, you're ready for a disruption in the market. And fortunately, Emily had this mindset. Last August, she invited me to conduct a brainstorming session as part of an innovation process she was going through to see how could we craft ideas to improve the joggling championships. And we actually held that brainstorming session virtually even last year because we were all spread out in various parts of North America. Emily actually resides in Canada. And in that brainstorming session, I used several different creative exercises as I normally do, whether it's an in-person or an online brainstorming session. My favorite brainstorming creative exercise that I used in that session is called Related Worlds. In Related Worlds, you look to other industries or other cultures to see how they solve problems, and then you adapt how they created those solutions to see if you can use it to meet your objective, your innovation objective. Probably the all-time classic example of Related Worlds type thinking is Gutenberg's printing press. So we know that Gutenberg in the 1450s lived in the part of Germany where he had seen the grape press in use to crush grapes when making wine. He had also seen the cloth press in use to stamp prints on clothing. And so it wasn't really that great of a leap for him to adapt that solution to a problem that he was working on of how to print books more efficiently. And this led to Gutenberg creating the printing press, which some people have said that is the #1 greatest human innovation in history. And it came about through Related Worlds type thinking. More recently, another great example of Related Worlds is how in Japan, they looked at the beak of the kingfisher bird, and that inspired the nose cone of Japan's bullet train. And this is also an example of what's called biomimicry, where we look to nature to see how nature has solved problems and see how we can use that to solve our own business problems today. So using related worlds and various other techniques, we generated a long list of ideas. Here's some of the better ideas that we had at the time. And one of these ideas was put forth by a joggler by the name of Sterling Franklin. And at that time, we called it video submission. And we discussed this idea, but then we kind of put it on the back burner. In the pre-COVID world, the idea of submitting videos or performances wasn't seen as something that was high priority at that time in 2019. Now, it's interesting how Sterling came up with the idea. It was partly inspired through related worlds type thinking. You see, Sterling had previously set 2 Guinness World Records back in 2005 in an activity that is called Dance Dance Revolution. So he was, in Guinness World Records, if anybody's familiar with how most world records are submitted and verified, it's by submitting a video, and they have various criteria for how to submit the video, actually very strict criteria on video submission. So he was, Sterling was familiar with that video submission. It's that kind of helped him stimulate the idea of video submission for the joggling championships. Well, when the pandemic broke out, the first thing that Emily Moore did was go back and revisit all these ideas, because she remembered we had some ideas related to doing things online. And so she immediately looked at the video submission idea and some of the other ideas, and she was pretty much ready to go with an alternative approach. And I want to let you hear directly from Emily on her thinking right at the time the pandemic broke out.
Yeah, it was extremely helpful to already have this list of ideas that we had gathered. And in fact, I did go back through and see, you know, what were the different things that we've discussed. And at that point, the online one did jump out at me. And I thought, well, this is a great time to be doing this online. And there were other elements like the games, and these were all elements that we could bring into the online format. I thought how amazingly timely it was that we had discussed the online option before we even knew that it would become vital in 2020 with the pandemic. Without that, the situation would have come right before my eyes, and I wouldn't have had all those great ideas to fall back on.
All right, now I want to come to another question break here. Does anybody have any questions about how the ideas were developed that ultimately led to an online joggling championships that I'm going to explain to you in a minute?
Well, Lynn, it looks like we do have one question from the previous question break, and that is, how hard is it to learn to joggle?
A very, very good question. Well, I would say it's much easier than it looks. I'm going to show you a video, highlights from the joggling championships this year in a little bit. And while it looks kind of daunting, with the proper instruction, it's really not that difficult to learn 3-ball joggling. I've taught thousands of people how to juggle. And I've taught a lot of people to juggle in less than 45 minutes just in the course of my workshop. And once you learn how to juggle, then you really just need a couple of more lessons and you're ready to joggle. So I think joggling is a great innovation in the sport of running, because it enables you to get a complete full body workout. You're exercising your upper body as well as your legs. You know, one of the problems I always had as a runner, I was neglecting all the upper body strength. But when I'm joggling, I don't have to be neglecting that. Sometimes I go out and I joggle specifically with 1-pound balls. And that's a real workout when you do joggling with 1-pound balls. And like a lot of people, I don't have time to go, in addition to running, especially when I was a competitive runner, I didn't have time to go spend a lot of time weightlifting in the gym. So by joggling, I get that full body workout. And in addition, it's also great for the mind as well. I see maybe another question has come in. I'll just read the question. I have a question from where he started. Does leadership have to be on board? Any way to step into it to convince them to experiment more and allow for failure? So I would argue that it is much easier when you have leadership in a company that is innovative minded. You know, a lot of these great companies like Apple, Amazon, Tesla, their chief executive officers are really doubling as chief innovation officers. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they're all innovative minded. But it is possible to drive innovation from the middle, as long as you have that process and then you strategically engage senior management at key points in that process. I actually have a separate presentation all about that I delivered at another conference a few years ago, and I don't want to get too derailed here. So I'm happy to, whoever that is, if you contact me, my contact information is at the end of the presentation. I'm happy to go through that with you. All right, Bill, should I continue on, or do we have any other questions that we should take right now?
Nope, looks like we're caught up.
Okay, great. All right, so the next thing that Emily did was float the concept of having an online joggling championship using the video submission idea and some other ideas. And joggler Sterling Franklin was really excited when he first heard about the concept and that this might actually be something that would take place. And I want to share a quote from Sterling with you.
I was pretty psyched when the online option came about. I definitely was not going to fly to El Paso. I just didn't want to be around people. I started running pretty isolated, trying to find parks. I got permission at various parks that were closed at the time. I actually did get permission to run on a track as well. That was nice to have an online option because now I had a place to run. I could set some goals. It gave me something to do during the pandemic.
So now Emily knew she had something that jogglers were interested in. She had tested the concept, and so now it was time to go to work to fully design the online World Joggling Championships. And there was a lot of considerations, a lot of challenges as she started designing what this event would look like. And I'll let you hear directly from Emily about those considerations and challenges.
The challenge with doing it via video submission means that people have different terrain, different tracks that they're running on. We also don't have as many witnesses, especially with the pandemic. So we have to make sure that there is a fair way that we can judge the videos. So that was something that went into mind for designing a competitive online type of event. But I also wanted to make sure that people who were perhaps like locked in their apartment or didn't have access to a track or didn't have access to measuring equipment still could participate if they wanted to. And that's really why I thought of doing the second fun run as a different way of people so that they could participate as well and still not be left out of the 2020 IHA Joggling Championships, but they could participate and still achieve some goals that they set.
And I want to underscore one of the things that Emily was saying right at the end there. I thought one thing that was particularly insightful was the way she didn't operate under constraints of saying, okay, I'm going to take this, what was a traditional 3 to 4 hour track meet that took place all in one day and had a standard set of events. She didn't just say, well, I'm going to take that and just move it online. She created not only these the World Championship traditional events, but also these fun run events to encourage first-time people, to encourage people to participate who couldn't meet the verification requirements, and also to submit for the first time various creative entries in divisions that we never had time to entertain and put on in the traditional constrained time of a 3 to 4 hour track meet. So she had both the World Championship events and the fun run creative type events as part of the online championships. And then Emily, once she had the design, she wanted to beta test the design to see would it work, what problems would there be. She wanted to be able to observe the problems that people had. So she asked a few jogglers to beta test and so she could observe how this would actually work. And I'll let you hear Emily describe what actually was a design thinking type approach.
A few jogglers were willing to beta test the event and send me some early footage as a proof of concept. So based on some potential concerns I was seeing there, for example, the video resolution, reliability and timing and format and so on, made some adjustments from there. Sterling was one of the people who beta tested. You know, he had a really nice head mount, a 360-degree camera, as well as a few other cameras. And he ran some events for me so I could see what a 3-ball, 100-meter or a 4-ball, 400-meter would look like.
Now, what's interesting about Emily's approach is it was very similar to that advocated by David Kelly, the founder of the iconic design firm IDEO. David Kelly was actually featured on the CBS show 60 Minutes several years ago discussing design thinking. And I want to let you hear a quote from David Kelly, who talks about the importance of observational research, just the way that Emily did it with the beta test of the joggling championships.
If you want to improve a piece of software, all you have to do is watch people using it and see when they grimace and then correlate that to where they are in the software, and you could fix that, right? And so the thing is to really build empathy, try to understand people through observing them.
So now Emily had the online championships completely designed, and she launched the website in early June, and this allowed jogglers 6 weeks to submit entries by the deadline, which was when our original original outdoor joggling track meet was supposed to take place back on July 18th. And Sterling Franklin will describe the experience of participating in the online joggling championships.
It was a lot of fun. It was kind of like a puzzle, piecing everything together and how my training could work out for, okay, we got a mile next week. All right, I'm going to run that. All right, next week I'm going to run a 400 and maybe throw in a 5-ball 100 or do some 4-ball events. So it was always something to do. Then I, of course, was thinking about, well, what's the best way to submit those things? And that was kind of a trial and error type thing. It was kind of fun, but piecing together like which video camera is the best, which action cam's the best, whether to go 360 or not, how to wear it, whether on your head or on a chest mount or whatever.
Now, Sterling actually set a world record in the 600-meter 3-ball event in a time of 1 minute and 44 seconds. This was actually his second fastest attempt. He had a problem, somewhat of a comical problem in his fastest attempt at the 600, which was not eligible for video submission, and you'll hear from Sterling what happened.
The 600 is kind of a sore spot because I was on pace for about a 141 and the camera flew off my head. It's because I didn't get a haircut all year because of this pandemic, and that head mount just was not on well enough.
So all in all, the online joggling championships were a huge success. Emily describes her surprise here at the number of international competitor submissions we had.
That was really surprising, a really fun discovery from my end to actually see that all these people from around the world were getting exposure to our joggling event. They learned about it somehow and they felt like participating. So that was really great.
And Emily received great feedback from most of the jogglers that participated.
We had a lot of great feedback. So I've had a few emails from people, like the guy in Germany, he emailed, said, I didn't find out about this event till pretty close to the deadline, but now I really want to participate again in a future online event. Him and a few other people have said that as well. So that really shows that this was a successful event that we put on.
And now Sterling Franklin is actually going to take over as joggling director in 2021. Now we're scheduled, hopefully the pandemic will be over by then. We're scheduled to be in Wichita, Kansas in 2021. But he looks actually for an online component to remain a part of the joggling championships in the future. The success we had can be built on, it could be integrated into the actual outdoor joggling championships. And I'll let you hear from Sterling about some of his plans.
One of the favorite things that I had from this competition was seeing all the international competitors, as well as just random collegiate runners who are submitting these really, really nasty times. And just seeing the enthusiasm of the people who submitted times. Like there's one runner from Japan who posted on Twitter about how he's so motivated to get his 5K joggling time down. Stuff like that. It's really cool to see. So you have a bunch of runners that we may not have seen before who love to do joggling and they want to get better. I'm hoping to have at least some form of virtual incorporation. I think this was a good trial run. I think we saw, and a lot of the things that Emily had to go through, those are really good for us going forward, because we're seeing, okay, what are some things we can recommend now? What are some good examples of good footage? What would not be allowable, that type of thing. So we tackled a lot of the hard issues this time around. I really did like the incorporation of the whole global involvement ability, as well as just all the new runners who are so psyched about joggling.
And now I want to share with you the 2-minute highlight reel from the 2020 Online Joggling Championships. I hope you enjoyed that. And now I'll just come back to the slideshow here. And now I'd like to share with you real quickly what I call the photo gallery. So we had some absolutely amazing performances in the online 2020 Joggling Championships. This is Chris Fowler. He's actually a professional entertainer as a juggler. He set the world record for juggling 3 shot puts. These are 12-pound balls of steel, and he juggled them for 100 meters in 15.96 seconds. Now, to give you an idea, that is a little over a 4-minute mile pace. You saw him in the video sprinting. That is just absolutely phenomenal. Also, we had 15-year-old David Pavlov Consolo won the gold medal in the 7-ball 100 meters. So he is running while juggling 7 balls. In the picture here, you can see he's got 2 in his hands and 5 that are in the air in like a C pattern there. So that is just absolutely amazing. And we had runners from all different ages and categories here. Caleb and Joshua Black, who won several medals in the boys 12 and under division. And this is Marla Edgecombe. She won gold in the 3-ball 400 meters in the girls 13 to 17 division. This is actually Sterling Franklin doing one of the creative type entries. He's joggling with 4 balls in this time series photo. This is Christoph Mittasch, another professional juggler from Austria who used a head-mounted camera for his video submission and submitted 4 events. And this is yours truly. I'm joggling on a road course. I could not get access to a track in Jacksonville, Florida, so I had a local road race director certify a course on the road for me where I could run the 400 meters, and I won the Masters 3-ball 400 meter event. And so that concludes the presentation. I want to leave you with these takeaways. So remember always, the business models of today will not work tomorrow. And sometimes, as was on March 11th, tomorrow is literally tomorrow. But in organizations that practice continuous innovation, they're going to be best prepared for that tomorrow whenever it comes. And your innovation process, make sure you're including brainstorming for a new idea, so you always have new ideas off the shelf that you can fall back on when the business environment suddenly changes and you're scrambling for, how do I operate now? How do I make a new business model work when the old business model ceases to exist for profitable business? And so now I'll take final questions and answers. And I'll also put up my contact information here. Bill, do we have any further questions?
Let's see. It looks like one that came through, but I believe some of your example photos may have answered this, but you said earlier 3-ball. How many does it go up to with joggling?
Yeah, so 7 balls is the highest we've ever seen in the joggling championships. There are people who can juggle 9 balls pretty proficiently. My son actually held the world record at one time for juggling 10 balls. That world record has now been exceeded. The world record for juggling is now 11 balls. But running while juggling, the limit right now is 7 for anybody who's successfully been able to do that.
And I struggle to walk and chew gum. We just got another question coming in from Victoria. Do you think COVID-19 is a good example of how change can happen overnight and might be used to justify a case to management about why investing in ongoing innovation helps companies be prepared?
Well, I would say an emphatic yes, and I think this presentation is a great example of that. For many businesses, their business models really ceased to exist as soon as the shutdown happened. I know in New Jersey, restaurants still can't have dine-in customers. Here in Florida, probably like most of the country, restaurants can only dine in at 50%. And I've been helping restaurants as part of my, some small business restaurants as part of my work for the Small Business Development Small Business Development Center, and helping them brainstorm for ideas for how they can increase revenue, look for new sources of revenue, because the traditional source of revenue is capped at 50%. So absolutely, I'm a huge advocate of having a continuous innovation process so that you're always looking out for what could be the next business model, and so that you are prepared for when the business environment changes. But even more important, so you can be more on the forefront of maybe creating that change, be the disruptor in a market and not be the one who is getting disrupted. Be more like Netflix than Blockbuster. Netflix versus Blockbuster is really a great business case. I love sharing that one in my class, because first, Netflix disrupted Blockbuster by moving to the online model for distribution of rental videos. But then Netflix did something that you rarely ever see. Usually the disruptor in an industry has a nice run and then their business model gets disrupted. But Netflix, as far back as 2007, started working on streaming. And that's why, even though you've got so many Silicon Valley digital technology companies, nobody beat Netflix to the next business model in how we were going to consume videos. They were able to turn their success in the online rental of videos into seamlessly move into the online streaming, because they were innovating from the beginning. They never thought that this would be the final model of how they're going to operate their business. So I think that is also a fantastic business case for continuous innovation. Well, if there's no other questions, I want to let everybody know of these free offers I have. So I'm happy to share these webinar slides. I'm also happy to share that portion of my book for free. If anybody wants that, just simply send me an email. And also offer here for conference attendees, I'm very happy to review and evaluate your innovation processes free of charge and at no obligation. So my contact information is there. I look forward to hearing from anybody. And Bill, thank you very much for this great opportunity to present to you and participate in this outstanding conference production.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lynn. We're about 10 minutes to the top of the hour, so I think this is a great point to take a pause, let you guys grab a cup of coffee or some lunch if you're ready, and we will step away and resume